ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Shadow and Sun Show, and welcome back to another episode of Prepping for Gamers. Tonight, we're going to continue our discussion on medical emergencies and first aid for gamers and preppers, trying to actually hit on the topic for gamers at some point in the show. Our good friend Bo is running a little bit late. I hope he will make it. But today, as always, my good buddy and the guy I could not do the show without, we've got Grim and his furry friends. How you doing today?
Oh, doing okay. This is a powerful guard dog. It's a breed called Chihuahua, and they were engineered to carry with you, and that you could just drop them, and they would attack and kill any enemy.
So they're like doggy landmines, furry
They're like
landmines,
doggy landmines,
or dog grenades. I like dog grenades
They're
better. Just
dog
here.
grenade.
Oh, dog attack, Chihuahua
Yep,
attack.
dogs.
Oh,
See, that's the way they
those guys
attack.
are adorable.
They think
And
you think that they're on your side, but then they bite you and tear your nose off, right?
yeah,
Yep,
you know, I
that's
actually in my will, when I finally leave this crummy planet, my dog gets my nose. I don't know how they're going to do that, but I said they can just chop it off and give it to them before they cremate me or do whatever they're doing. Actually,
that's
I left
nice.
I left my body to a place called the Willed Body Program, so my family will not have the burial expenses or funeral expenses of any sort, and my body can be used to whatever. I don't care, as long as they don't animate me and have me go do stuff. I'm fine with that. With us tonight as a special guest, we have Grim's lovely wife, Michelle. How you doing today?
Doing well, thank you. Thank you
Glad
for
to
letting
have
me
you
come
on
on.
board. Glad to have you on board. Don't feel nervous. This is a lot of fun. A lot of great people are not watching the show right now. I don't know where you guys are, but get your butts over here. Start watching the show. We need eyes on the show, so we don't feel weird, because it is weird when there's nobody in the chat to bounce off. But I thought I saw something weird out of the corner of my eye. But we're all good. So today, like I said at the beginning, we're going to talk about medical emergencies and first aid. Hey, Grandma, how you doing? Welcome to the show.
Hi, Grandma.
RPG Grandma, are you famous yet? Because we're still working on it. I just need to get with your PR guys and your agent and all that, and we'll do lunch or something. So, Michelle, what do you think of? What's the first thing you think of when you think about prepping for an emergency, medical wise?
The first thing that I think about always has been that a lot of it is very simple and a lot of it is very easy to do. And a lot of things you should be doing on an ongoing basis anyway at your home. Like, just the first thing off the top of my head is sanitation. Just the idea of having soap and water. Very basic, very simple, but super important, and like the very place to start when you're thinking about what can I get ready to have on hand in case.
Very good. Yep.
We only touched on that a little bit. Are there any tricks or tips? Like I know, like, for example, like bar soap is preferable to any of the other kinds, like liquid and soft soaps and things like that. Just because it lasts longer and it weighs less if you have to carry it.
It's not going to spill. It's not going
Right.
to spill on anything.
Or leak.
It stays longer. It stays better longer. Like before you use it, you can have it in your cabinet, and years later, it's still soapy and it's going to work fine. So, there's some things like that too. I think everybody has their own particular, anymore, a lot of people have their own particular preferences, organic or foam soap or bar soap or castile soap, whatever people have that they prefer is really what they should go with, I think. Whatever you like to use.
Like, I'm deathly allergic to Dial for some reason, the orange. I can't use it. My skin just breaks out like crazy if I use it. What about things like rubbing alcohol and peroxide?
Well, they're not as useful as you might think. Probably not bad to have some there, but it's far down on my list personally. Both
Okay.
of those are.
Because I know that during the last 2-year lockdown, those were really hard to find. They were very, very hard to find, and I don't know why, but
I think
it was.
people were using alcohol to make hand sanitizer or as a hand sanitizer. I don't think hand sanitizing is as important as that whole event might have made people feel it is. But peroxide, I don't know why peroxide was in short supply. I think a lot of people were just stressing out and there were supply line problems with refilling things on the shelf. But alcohol would be, if you're into hand sanitizing, that would be a thing you would want. The first thing is just simply look at what you do and what you like and start there.
And Grandma asked about iodine.
Yep.
Iodine, I would say is more useful, but farther down the road when you need to sanitize skin for sutures, or if you have a cut, and you're going to put steri strips or some kind of bandages on it. It's not a bad idea to have something to really clean your skin. You can use soap and water first. Absolutely. Iodine is not a bad idea.
How about like Neosporin?
Yeah, that would enter into like what I was going to say, like my 4 layers of medical family preparedness. Number 1, what do you use now? What do you need right now? Hand soap, the things that you use right now, Band-Aids, whatever it is that you have in your family that you make use of, all the way from medications down to Neosporin or some type of ointment like that. And those things, even if they have an expiration date on them, they're good past the expiration date. So when I purchase those, I look to see if I can't get the farthest out date, obviously the longest, date before the expiration date. But even after that, we keep them and use them. It's really not, they may lose some effectiveness, but they generally don't become toxic or anything like that. So in a situation where you couldn't get more, you would still want to use that.
And I've never heard of this product, Betadine.
Betadine is iodine. It's a cleanser usually with iodine. So it's a similar, and also chlorhexidine is in that same family. I use chlorhexidine here at the house for cleaning off wounds. So that would be a thing you could use to clean something, especially a wound. Yeah. Okay. So
and,
if I
last question, I guess, maybe on this topic. Hey, Mobius, what are you doing, bud? The whole hand sanitizer thing. What was that all about? I mean, how is it any different than hot soapy water?
Oh, it's not any more effective, but it is more risky. Hot soap and water is the way to go. And when you wash your hands, you may know, some people know, you really have to wash all the surfaces of your hand. There's actually a sequence of parts that you do them in a certain order. You cover your entire hand, wash your hands to the tune of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star.
Right.
So however many seconds that is, or what's the other song? What's the other song?
I remember that from watching MASH all those years ago.
Yeah.
I never missed an episode except the last episode. Somehow I missed the finale, and I didn't watch that until years and years later. And I'm like, oh my God, this was dark. This was dark, and
it was really dark, that part.
And but I between my family, both my parents being in and out of the hospital a lot because of various complications from polio. I learned a lot of this stuff really early on, and the Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and there was an episode where they actually show them doing the hand thing, and
right.
I was just wondering because even now I know people that everywhere they go they're doing the sanitizer thing, and I'm like, I used to play in the dirt as a kid. You know what I mean? And, as long as I didn't look dirty, things were fine. And, I didn't get the thing. I didn't get the shots. And I would go to stores in the middle of it with no mask. I'd refuse to do all that stuff, and nothing happened. I didn't even
Good
get
for
the
you.
sniffles, and I don't know if it's because of something I was doing or just lucky, because I've been pretty sick before, but it's been quite a while since I've really gotten sick, and I don't I don't know anybody who.
You might have gotten some of it and not even known it. You
That's
may have gotten a
entirely
little
true,
touch of it and not
possible,
even known it.
because I have been, very tired for the last 6 months, but that was mostly I'm attributing that to the cold weather. I don't like cold weather. All I want to do is eat and sleep when it's really cold. So maybe that was it, because I noticed as soon as it hit 80 degrees here, I'm like, I've got a lot more energy, and yeah, most
Yep,
people don't even wash enough, says Mobius. And what else he said? And if it did so much, what was up with the elbow bumps and foot knocks? Right.
Right. Well, we know that viruses are transmitted, the coronavirus and other cold viruses, by contact and by what's in the air. So clearly, if you touch the handle of a store door, probably a bunch of other people have already touched it, and you're going to be in contact with some of those germs. So that idea was to keep your hands clean. It's not a bad idea, but it went a little bit overboard. And also, there was a lot sold to us under the guise of protecting ourselves from the COVID epidemic.
Mhm.
And a lot of that was false, and a lot of that was misleading. So,
Yeah, because
however,
it seems to me that you would literally have to touch it, and either it crawls up your arm and into your mouth or nose, or you would have to be sticking your hands in your eyes or your nose or your mouth for even if you touched it. You know what I mean?
right.
What's going to happen after that? If I touch it and keep my hands out like this, how long until it dies? You know what I mean? On my
Yeah.
hand.
A long time. Well, that's the thing. We used to tell people in medicine, I'm a nurse, you really can't protect yourself from cold viruses. If your child gets a cold virus, or let's say a bad cold virus, RSV, which I'm
The
not
flu.
saying is a cold virus, but a worse virus that's just
Sorry,
transmitted in the
RPG
community.
grandma. I was just
Um,
telling RPG grandma she got locked in with her kids. Sorry that happened to you.
Yeah,
I'm sure
that was the weird thing is my wife was sick, and she stayed home because of the thing, and she'd gotten all the boosters, all the shots, and I never got even the sniffles, and she tried quarantining up in the upstairs room, but I've got the studio up here or back then, and I didn't get any of it. My son got a little sick but never tested positive, and we were fine. He was fine in a day or two, and he just felt crappy. Wasn't even sneezing or coughing all that much. But she had it for 2 weeks, something like that, and walking around the house, and nothing. So, mind you, it was toward the I don't know which variant it was, but it wasn't the first one. And we did all the things at the beginning. We did the sanitizer. We would wash our groceries when we brought them home, doing all that crazy stuff. And there came a point, after the 14 days, that I was just like, no, this is not. This is we're being sold a bill of goods, and I'm not having any more of it. And agreed, Zeblin. False and misleading. They were still discovering and determining what was happening. Yes, to this day,
they were.
we're not going to get a straight story. Because a straight story would lead to, war crimes. In my opinion, crimes against humanity. If we really thought for a second that China did this, intentionally, which I personally think that's the case. This kind of accident does not really seem in line with the strictness of the protocols that should be in place, because we've gone the better part of a century with these sort of institutions all over the planet, and we just get it now when it actually benefits a huge section of the powers that be's agenda, and now we get it. You know what I mean? It was just too well timed to to believe that it was anything other than a war crime.
And at the
Absolutely.
beginning, we really didn't know, and none of us knew. And I, as a nurse, was very serious about. I washed our groceries off too. I was very careful about things. We didn't go where we didn't need to go. However, I still went to work at the hospital every day and took care of patients who had whatever. But the part where it became misleading was we always knew in medicine. We always knew that masking was not going to protect people. It wasn't going to protect the people outside that weren't you, and it wasn't going to protect you either, because
Right.
the type of masks that were being used, just fabric masks or general use type masks, weren't surgical masks, weren't N95 masks. Those are not designed to protect against viruses, and they never did. And we always knew that. So that's how I feel. That's where I started breaking off and saying, hey, wait a minute, that is not, that's misleading. So what else is happening here? And a lot of people didn't. I got COVID at least twice. The first time was before you could be tested, but I had the symptoms. And then the second time I did test positive. And both times, the first time wasn't too bad, and the second time wasn't that bad either. I mean, I was sick, but it was more like a flu and not a super bad flu. So
Now I got it and I almost died, but my wife and the Lord saved me. What was that we got in Florida for free that we drove down there for?
there was no
Mono-
treatment. There was no treatment being offered in
Monoblade.
Virginia for positive COVID tests. So I got online and realized that in Florida, you could get monoclonal antibodies, which is a
Right.
treatment,
I
a
do remember the
recognized
name of
treatment.
it. One of the same things that Joe Rogan was doing, right?
Right. You couldn't get it in Virginia. It was unavailable. Our doctor called the two centers that had it, and they were like, well, we can get you in about 4 days. And Dave
We
was
had a
really sick. So that wasn't
horrible
a thing.
communist governor. He was a communist. He was horrible.
Okay, Dave.
He was
We got in the car and we drove to Florida, where we got an easy appointment, and for free, both of us received monoclonal antibodies. And I do think it helped in the course of Dave's illness, because he was quite sick. He was in the ICU and he was on high flow oxygen, and all that.
There's
So
something else I picked up, besides the horse paste, that for me, I never even needed to use it, but I still got it. But
it's good to
still,
have.
yeah. There's other things, people talk about, other types of antibiotics for pets and things like that. Hopefully we won't get to that again.
I want to say this about India. A lot of people don't know this, but India was hit with a worse variant of COVID right before their elections. They were hit with a worse variant of COVID, and they were having a bad time of it. Then they made it mandatory that everybody take what is that medicine, Ann?
Hydrochloroquine.
ivermectin.
Yep, everybody
Ivermectin.
had to
Oh,
take
it was ivermectin? Okay.
ivermectin. The worst area
I'm pretty sure.
they started with first, the worst area they had in India, where people were dying, they had everybody take this ivermectin first. And then they were the first to be very quickly clear of COVID. Ivermectin works. It's proven in India. And it can, what we had horrible people telling us, don't take this, you couldn't get it. They were even people that ordered it out of the country. They had the post office put a stamp on it, hold it, and say, you can't get this medicine, literally.
I remember that.
I
You know what was one of the things that really tipped me off? I live here in California, and we've got a huge, I mean, absolutely massive homeless population here.
Yep.
And you would think that people living outdoors, etc., would have been the first people to just start dropping like flies, and that never happened. You know what I mean? You would think, maybe that's I'm going down the wrong direction thinking that way, because of living outdoors and in a harsher environment, and actually less clean, and therefore more around different things from not being clean all the time. Maybe their immunities were actually stronger than the average folk. I don't know. What do you think?
Maybe their immunity was stronger, but also there were a lot of people that didn't get COVID. There were a lot of populations in which it just wasn't there, and there wasn't much of it. So, and the people who got treatment for COVID actually fared not that
Worse.
well. The standard treatments in our country that were offered and given um, were not effective, to say the least, and some of them actually were lethal. But
or the worst possible treatment.
yeah, it falls into like, I have 4 categories, and that falls into like the second category. First being, what do you already use and know you need? And the second category being, what can you foresee that you may need? In the past, none of us really would have said, oh, prepare for a pandemic virus. But now we think, maybe that's something, you may need that again. There may come another virus out, and you may want to prepare now and have some things on hand for things like that may come out, whether it's COVID or another type of virus. RPG Grandma says they still do not know how to help my lungs. Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry to hear that. And that is a thing that, is ongoing for a lot of people. Different damage that was done either by the virus or by the treatments, and they're still struggling and suffering with those. And the vaccine as well also damaged people. So,
I
and
have
continues to do
severely
so.
bad lungs. I'm amazed.
Yeah, I didn't really
I'm
mean
amazed
for this
I
to go
live.
down this particular
Yeah.
rabbit hole. But you mentioned you have a 4-step thing. You've hit step number 1. What would you say is your step 2?
That is my step 2. Look at things you may need in the future. For instance, now you have little babies and toddlers, but they'll be growing up and they'll be going to outside and sprain their ankle and other types of illnesses and problems that are things you could foresee that would happen. Or maybe you have a chronic disease and you're doing X, Y, and Z for it now, but you expect it to get better or worse. And you may think, oh, later I might need a cane to walk. So there's an idea of something that you could have on hand for things you can see that may be coming up for you in the future. And like I said, an example of that too is preparing for a pandemic virus. I have several boxes of medications and things that are going to be useful for pandemic virus, and things like inhaled hydrogen peroxide, different things that I've been looked up and have been aware of that I'm ready to provide if my family needs it, for immune boosting and other types of things if there is a pandemic virus, or something that you think you're worried about, in your area. Maybe it's hurricanes, what kind of injuries would you expect to have to deal with? What kind of things would you think you'd need? That kind of thing. That's number 2. Look around and see what you're going to need in the future, that you know for sure.
If you're in a flood area, be ready for floods. If you're in a swamp, you could be ready for some kind of unknown mosquito-borne. If you're in a warmer climate or swampy area.
Things you can think of that may be things that arise for you. What would you need in your family to treat the things that your family will encounter? Yeah.
Here's a question I've been wondering for a while. When it comes to not just prescription medications, but over the counters, how long do you think they're safe after the expiration date?
A long, long time. A long, long time. Very few of them actually turn into something toxic. I'm only aware of oral antibiotics, especially liquid oral antibiotics, like are given to children. Those I am aware that sometimes later, if you leave them sit around for a real long time, they can develop things that are not that healthy to take. But all kinds of pills and other medications that are over the counter, I mean, I personally would use them and buy a new one. So even if it was past the date, I would still just use that one and then replace it with a new one.
Like a year after, like let's just say aspirin, generic aspirin.
Oh, yeah.
2 years after.
I'm not a doctor and I'm not going to take, responsibility for anybody, but I have a bottle of aspirin that's been in my medicine box, Dave, maybe at least half as long as I've known him. So at least 10 or 15 years. And, it still works. I took some not that long ago. I don't use aspirin very often, but I have it.
Yeah, no, I actually use aspirin. Like sometimes once a week. I get headaches real easy, and I've got a bottle that's I think 2 years old, and if I get a headache, I take it, and I don't know if they're making it go away or if it's just time or a breathing issue or any number of things. Reading too long, things like that'll do it. Or if I don't get the right sleep, I'll wake up, have something to eat, take a couple aspirin, and if it's the aspirin working, I don't I can't be 100%. But Zeblik says aspirin 10 to 15 years after expiration date. That's kind of amazing. You would, which begs the question: why is there an expiration date that's so low, other than to get us to just throw them out?
People throw things out all the time, food and other things that have a best by date or an expiration date. Yeah, it's have to look at it for yourself. Not only that, I don't have the money to keep buying new stuff.
Right,
If I buy a
right,
bottle of aspirin, it's not expensive, but I don't want to throw it away and buy a new one if I don't have to. So
right. Absolutely.
the other thing people may not know or is important, is a good idea. You mentioned aspirin. That is, if you have any symptoms of heart problem at
Mm-hmm.
all, by that I mean chest pain, arm pain, crushing pain in your chest, the first thing they're going to tell you is to take an aspirin. Well,
Yep.
right now you may not have that in your current medical condition, but maybe your whole family has had heart problems, so maybe that's something you want to think about, having a bottle of aspirin on hand, so that if anything like that does happen, when you call in case of a stroke or any kind of cardiac event, the 911 are going to ask you to take an aspirin as soon as possible, and the EMTs will give it to you if they arrive and you don't haven't taken it already.
Yeah,
So
right, because it's a blood thinner, right?
it inhibits the aggregation of platelets. So yeah, it inhibits clotting. Yeah.
Okay. Now the same thing goes with foods. I know canned foods have a much longer, as long as the can's not dented or damaged or something like that, or rusting on the outside. You know, I I used to literally go and throw my cans out. I would check my thing. Oh, expired. Toss it. Toss it. Toss it. Now I just rotate better, and it's not a problem. And things like honey and pasta and rice and beans, if they're kept dry and safe and away from moisture and bugs, they will potentially last very,
Long
very long.
time.
Now, I know cup of noodles. That's one thing though. I do know from experience they can go bad actually rather quickly. So if you are stocking up on literally like cup of noodles brand or any of the ramen,
Mhm.
just go through them, eat them, and get rid of them, and don't restock them unless you like them, because they will taste a lot different. Than, I'm not saying that that they're going to kill you or make you sick, but to begin with, they don't have a lot of nutritional value to begin with. It's more of a stopgap. Okay, you're hungry. Okay, well, you're having this for lunch, but don't expect to actually survive off of things like that. Your kids eat them too quick, Mobius. Yeah, my son loves them too, but I noticed the last time I made them, I'm like, yeah, this don't taste so great. It's time to start, pumping these out and get them out of the larder,
Those
and work on just, you know,
those
regular,
little
spaghetti or macaroni noodles. Just stock up on those
Mhm.
bags and seal them again in something else. RPG Grandma is saying storage methods help. Yes, storage methods are actually one of the biggest issues. If you're going to stockpile, it's worthless if you don't store it properly. If it's not,
those
put away
those
in a safe, dry, preferably dark place
those
with,
little
Yeah.
packets though that come with the ramen noodles, the little aluminum packets, they
yep,
can last quite a while. And
absolutely. I
that
was
that
going to say that
Those are just salt. Yeah.
it was salt and saffron and something else, chicken flavor, whatever. Those are actually more important than the pasta itself, because the pasta is nasty after a while. But just buying bags of spaghetti and macaroni and rice and beans and things like that, and then if you're going to add something to it, which of course you're going to want to, getting the jars and cans of tomato sauce, cheese, mixed cheese, whatever, however you like it,
and if you're ever in a desperate situation, a lot of people don't do this. They eat the stuff, but you can make a fine soup or stew out of a lot of stuff if you
yeah,
have fresh water and feed a lot more people. and
Right.
they'll feel full. It's not going to
Even
be as
though it's
nutrient
right.
oriented, but it's going to be pretty good.
Right. That's the whole stopgap idea. Here at the where we live, my son and I, we don't normally eat lunch. We've gotten into that habit a long time ago. Just we don't eat lunch because we're going to eat technically, in 4 hours after lunch. If we can't go 4 hours without that middle meal, then we're already on the wrong path. When he gets into the service or something like that, he will be eating that third meal. He will be starving because of all the exercise and things like that. But right now, it's just there's no point. We eat breakfast at about 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, and it's usually a good breakfast. It's not just a bowl of cereal and out the door kind of thing.
Shadow, I wanted to ask you, you did get to see the last MASH, right?
Yes, I did.
And that was the one where they all died, and they turned into probably, was it regular flesh-eating zombies or the brain-eating zombies, or I don't remember.
That wasn't the one I saw, my friend.
I thought that, well, that
He can
sucks.
turn anything into a zombie conversation.
Good for him. Zeblick says canned foods will generally be good for several years if stored properly. And Mobius says spices, no point having stuff if it tastes like crap. Absolutely.
True. And
We've got
salt, a lot of salt.
We've got salt. We've got our favorite, which is just Lowry's seasonal, and we just put that on just about everything: hamburgers, eggs, the whole bit. And it's got a whole bunch of different stuff in it. And damn chicken. What do you mean by damn chicken? Chicken's good. We eat more chicken than beef around here. But yeah, and that way it makes it easy for us. We just stock up on the one kind of spice instead of. I mean, we do use pepper for mac and cheese, so we've got that. But most of the other stuff, we just, it's a whole lot of different little containers that, if it's for a special recipe, maybe, but even then, we rarely go out and buy the other spices. But you know what? If you want to, I don't recommend against it. And, worst comes to worst, it would make for a great trading item if you have, extra pepper or, rosemary or garlic or something like that. You could probably get, pretty far with things like that, especially since they're small containers. And you could probably get a lot more of what you actually need because there's going to be people, if a situation got bad, and I'm going to touch on that in just a minute, but if a situation got bad, which it's not likely, a lot of people are going to be rather foolish when it comes to the things they want versus the things they need. And the things they want are going to, for a lot of people, be a bigger priority than the things they need. That's, sort of a luxury that we here, we don't really buy into that mentality. Luxuries for us are things that a lot of other people just consider, everyday things, like eating out, fast food and stuff like that. We really try to, curb our foods and things like that. If for us, we'd rather, buy a new book or something like that than to go out to a restaurant that's incredibly overpriced. We can't get in and out of a burger restaurant. Take your pick: Wendy's, Hardee's, Jack in the Box, McDonald's, for less than like $40. When 2 years ago we could do it for 20 and have a little bit of change left over, or maybe even get some dessert or something like that. And now it's just absolutely insane, the prices, when you consider the price of making, for example, a hamburger at home. I can feed the family a burger each for sometimes 20% of the cost of a restaurant.
Oh yeah. And Chris, That's also an example of how, the food value is huge between this fast food, whatever, and what you're feeding yourselves at home. So that's an example of how, as a lifestyle, you can keep yourself healthier ongoing, and you're more ready for anything that comes along, whether it's an infection or any kind of other, situation that comes up. So you guys are going to be, because of that decision, healthier, all of you, than you were going to be if you ate McDonald's every day.
Sorry, my son's buddy, and I don't know. I'm trying to get him to talk on here. He's a paramedic, and his buddy's named Chris, and he's almost paramedic. They're both almost paramedics, I guess.
Yeah,
But,
speaking of which, I don't know what happened to
they
Bo.
won't-
We've
won't
been on
come
a
on here.
half hour, and I'm guessing he's sleeping.
Oh,
But
he's sleeping.
since he's not here, he keeps reminding me that the worst case scenario situations are the least likely situations to hit us. The zombie apocalypse, the Mad Max sort of scenarios. Hey, Squirrel, you need to get a hold of me by Friday, man. We gotta set that thing up. But it's good to see you in the show.
Hey, Chris, William, y'all want to go on? Come on.
Yeah,
They're
the
not-
links.
they're not
You know what? I'll
they're
put
not
the link
coming
back up if you guys want to pop in.
They won't come on. Sorry. They're running out again to do a call. Goodbye.
Oh, okay. No worries. I maybe next time. But like you guys said at the beginning, prep for the situations that are the most likely. He's fond of the old horse and zebra, line, which I've actually known for quite a long time, because of spending so much time in the hospitals because of my parents in and out. As a kid, I literally, my brother and we actually spent I think it was Christmas. Yeah, I think it was Christmas in a hospital waiting room while both our parents had been in there for several days, and they would just let us come and go. They didn't even.
That's nice.
We were under 12 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and we would just walk, or take a bus to the hospital and back. There was no one at home, and both our parents were in the hospital, and
Wow.
certain agencies should have been called, and thank God they weren't. They were later, but I got to learn a lot of some of the stuff, including the horses and zebra thing. But back to what Bo would be telling us is, prepare for the most likely situations that you can have, and if you do that, then you're already more than halfway there to something worse. And if it gets there, we'll deal with that as it happens. But one of the benefits I found from the prepping is that it's kind of like an insurance policy, because one of the things he also mentioned is losing a job can be worse than an earthquake or something like that, because everybody else is fine but you're not. And I found that by prepping, take care, Grandma. We'll see you real soon. Okay.
Bye, Grandma.
That by having the stuff in our pantries, the extra stuff, we've been able to either lower or even eliminate a grocery bill by having all the stuff, other than maybe like milk and some fresh fruits and veggies. Well, we've got all this other stuff. We can just go a week or 2 weeks, because we go every 2 weeks. And by having all this extras, put away already for the situation, even things like shampoo and conditioner, because I got to take care of the hair. That we can go without our regular 2 week trip, which is anywhere from $200 to $275, depending on the time of year, and if we go a little crazy, or if it's like we're getting ready for Easter or Christmas or Thanksgiving, then we've got to get all those special things. And it turned out like for this Easter, we had a ham, and I was like, well, I bought that like 6 months ago. I'm not even joking. And it was in the package. It wasn't a canned ham. It was a regular ham. And I'm like, Well, I don't
You
know.
you
I was
may have
kind of,
been able to you may have gotten that too at a really good price that you weren't going to find now. That's
well,
my thing
hey,
in the
I know.
past year was
6 months.
to buy as much of whatever I could get because I felt like prices were going to go up like before eggs and everything went up. And I was right, they were going to go up. So my son's like, "Why are you putting this in the jars and saving it?" I'm like, "Well, at least now I'm paying, $1.49 a pound for it and what it's selling for now is $2.49." So, that way you've saved yourself a lot of money as a family as well.
Mobius, real quick on before I read this, did you mean fam instead of fans? Because he says I find it so funny when the fans like, "There's nothing to eat, just nothing easy." Yeah, okay, okay, got it. I didn't see that you put fams. Okay, yeah. Unless it's certain fresh fruits and vegetables, which is kind of a luxury, but I'll tell you, canned fruits and veggies will still give you. I'm going to go with at least 50% of what you're expecting. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, at least.
And that's better than zero. And sure, I like fresh lettuce, and there's no canned or frozen lettuce you can ever get that's going to be worth a damn. But other things, you know, you can get and store for that time when you're not going to go to the grocery store. You're going to go, okay, well, you know what? Maybe this week we won't have any lettuce, but we'll break out all the canned beans or asparagus or things like that, which I was able to do because if I try to buy, I like canned asparagus. Most people hate it, but I like it. I wanted to have it with Easter, and I'm like, hey, you know what? I got a couple of cans here in the pantry, and if I were to go buy one lettuce, you can afford that. It's like $5 a can here. Okay.
It is, yeah.
And I was telling my son, this is it's supposed to be one of the most expensive and highfalutin veggies. Try it. It's like, nah, I don't like it. Like, okay, more for me. But by having that insurance policy in your pantry, it's you can literally go a week or 2 weeks, and you probably won't even deplete your stock. Now, if you would completely empty it by not shopping, then you're actually in a more precarious position because you haven't been stocking up long enough, and you may want to just go into it a little and see what you can do and make things stretch. But if for some reason you are well stocked and you do have that emergency of you get laid off or some other expense comes along, like a water heater busts or something like that, you can tap into that insurance policy. So,
yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I was going to say, and to what Mobius said also was about there's nothing to eat, just nothing easy. People are not resilient. They're just not willing to do what they need to do. I think people should take one day a week, at least, if you're not used to taking care of yourself and prepping meals and, figuring out what to do. Learn how to make some simple things, learn how to take care of yourself, because don't you want to be able to adjust to, your change in circumstances if it happens? Or do you just want to say, oh, this is terrible, McDonald's is closed, what am I going to do? I mean, why would you want to do that? You should prepare yourself by being more resilient as well.
Great point. No, that goes into another thing that we're gonna do an episode coming up on getting back into shape. If you can't carry your bug out bag, why have a bug out bag? If you can't carry that all day long, then hey, Kevin, long time no see. Hey, yeah, exactly,
Okay.
Kevin. Lettuce, while good, only provides a little fiber, vitamin K, and moisture. Kevin is one of my oldest and dearest friends in the whole wide world. We've been through thick and thin, and I'm sorry I missed your call the other day, buddy. So let's go on to your step 3 or your number 3.
Okay, so third step for me is something that I'm able to do a lot more of than some people. That is things that you might go to an urgent care for. Be prepared for, what kind of things will take someone to an urgent care? A laceration that needs stitches. A bad case of diarrhea and you're feeling depleted. Cold and flu kind of things we talked a little bit about. Things that you would need to do to be ready for that. Some are medications, for instance, if you have diarrhea and it's really bad and you don't feel good anymore, you might want to go to urgent care for that. If urgent care is not available, you should be able to have some medications on hand, some electrolyte fluids, maybe. There are things
Gatorade and
that
pretzels.
say
Gatorade and
what?
pretzels.
I like
Gatorade,
Gatorade.
Gatorade and
Gatorade
pretzels.
really works for me if I don't feel well. I like it for that. Yeah, and for your little ones, there's Pedialyte or some other types of electrolytes, things that you can be ready with. Now it's you have the option of going to the urgent care is not a problem, but if that isn't available, what would you be willing and able to take care of? Learn how to take care of on your own.
How much are medical staplers? Those are handy.
No,
For people
because
that can't
you
do
have to know
stitches.
how to use those, and they're harder to use and harder to heal than sutures. Suturing is something
Really?
that
I
can
didn't
be
know that.
learned.
Yeah, sutures
Suturing
are
can be
cheaper
learned, and
easier to
that's
get.
a thing that would really help if you had, somebody who's unaccustomed to being outside in the garden and cut something open and you couldn't, what were you going to do? Clean it, like we talked about, having plenty of water, plenty of sanitizer, cleaner, whatever it is, soap, and some of that betadine maybe that grandma was talking about, and then someone who knows how to do the sutures and the needles. Also, those are actually available at retail, so that's a thing you can purchase and have on hand. Learn how to do it. There are videos that show how to do it. That isn't a hard thing to learn how to do, and there's a lot that you can learn. In fact, why not take the EMT course? If you and your family and no one in your family has the slightest clue about things to take, for that sort of level of care where you're gone to urgent care because something's going on. Maybe you're the one that needs to learn it if you're interested. That would be a good and not a bad idea. The fourth level is things you can't do really on your own. You cannot do an appendectomy at home. I mean, very few
Let
people,
alone
only
on
surgeons.
yourself.
Well, not on yourself for sure, but I wouldn't want to do it on anyone I loved either. I mean, I'm not prepared to do surgery, and even with a good book, I'm not going to do that. So in order to be prepared for that in the future, maybe you need to look at alternatives. Is there a group, or is there a doctor in the neighborhood, or is there someone? Can you encourage your kid to become a surgeon? Go to school, and what can you do to make those things available to yourself?
That's why they were always pushing us to become doctors and lawyers.
See, because then they don't have to pay the expensive providers for those things.
Our parents were. I like this, Squirrel. I did not know this. Pedialyte is best even for adults. We use it when doing hot work, working within 10 feet of a 2,600 degree furnace. Wow, Squirrel. That's why you're so crazy, man. It's all that heat. It's all that heat, man. The
problem with Pedialyte is pretty gross tasting. So yes, if you want to swallow it, it is a very good substance for that.
I thought it was all grape flavor and stuff.
Yeah, it's nasty. I'm sorry. It actually is really, that's why I personally would take Gatorade. I mean, Gatorade has a ton of sugar though. That's the big problem.
10 feet. Yeah, I figured not 10 inches, Squirrel. You wouldn't have had a beard or hair to shave off. So yeah.
Toasty. Yeah.
Wow.
Sadly, like I said before about all this and why you should be prepared is don't count on a government, don't count on a president who after a shooting comes out laughing and making jokes. If you think you can count on somebody like that as an American citizen, when they should come out with reverence and, kind heart, talking about a shooting, which is a terrible thing, which, a lot of these shootings are happening. Wonder why. But you get these people like that. You get a guy from the transportation secretary doesn't want to go to an accident involving transportation because he's doing who knows what. Don't count on these people. You should not. You should not. You should not. Don't count on FEMA. Don't count on, you can count on your local authorities probably. We live in a good area. We're blessed that way. Hopefully you can count on your local authorities. But after that level, we have no civil defense anymore. And I like to stress that it was an extremely well-organized organization. They had everything from communication to police to everything. and they knew what to do. And we have nothing like that. FEMA's not even close to what we used to have in our civil defense. And so don't count on anybody saving you. Don't count on anybody coming to the rescue.
Take care,
And
Kevin.
Be prepared. That's what I'm saying. Be very prepared, because you're going to need it. And if you have a family, you care about people, you're going to need it. I mean, things are getting worse. They're not getting better. Our country is literally going backwards and falling apart. I mean, backwards.
Well, that's 100% intentional by some very, very bad actors.
Yep.
Crafting says you're forgetting an important part of sewing. I think you mean sutures yourself. Having something to bite down on, I know from personal experience, is it hurts. Yeah, I can't even imagine that, but I am glad you brought that up as a reminder. If you have to go through anything like that, like setting a bone or something like that out there as well. If you have to do something that's going to hurt, you might want to have something to bite down on. Wallets, I hear, are a good choice. Most people always have one, especially if it's leather and you take the cards out so you don't crack them, type of thing, just in case. But I've seen that before somewhere. I don't remember, but
we'll try to think about maybe what if you're having to do sutures on your 10-year-old. Think about it. Think about how you would distract that child, or do you have any medications that you could give that child to help him calm down? Do you have any? I'm not going to give any ideas, but think about it. And what would you do if your 10-year-old needed something like that and there was no doctor to go to?
If you're going to bite down on something also, a toilet paper roll with paper towel wrapped around it, or even toilet paper, though that's not the best idea, but a paper towel roll with some paper towel on it is a good thing to bite down on, because I've had issues with
hold. I don't think
sleeper hold.
Yeah. No,
yep.
Not doing that to my boy. Sorry, dude, not doing that to my boy. Real quick, I want to go through a couple of the comments in the chat. Glass tanks are 3,200 degrees and you can't shut them down during a repair. Wow. We have a border czar who doesn't go to the border, and don't get him started on his own government sleeper hold. That's hysterical. Yeah, I kind of alluded to that, a shot of something strong. Maybe you can clear up another question I have since we're talking about things like sutures. The myth of super glue.
Oh, that's not a myth. Super glue is effective. Yes. And I can't remember who it was that mentioned electrical tape a minute ago. My son actually uses electrical tape to hold some little cuts together. He uses it regularly pretty much. And also duct tape is a very useful, very, very useful stuff to have around.
I'm trying to go with the electrical tape, because duct tape to me just sounds like you may make a worse wound trying to take the duct tape off.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. Electrical tape, I know from experience. I've used it, for stuff like that, and it will eventually just fall off. Where I've also used Scotch tape and a paper towel. In an emergency, anytime I cut my fingers, that's all I do is I grab some toilet paper, wrap it around, and then a little bit of Scotch tape, and I go back to doing whatever I was doing. But that's amazing with the super glue.
Well, let me just clarify that super glue works really well to hold skin layers together. But if you have a deeper gash where the other layers are not together, it's not going to hold everything together. It's just going to be more of a surface cut, or like one of those slices that lifts off like a flap. You can use it to glue that back down. In fact, there is super glue that's used in the operating room to close. Once they've sutured together the layers underneath, they use the super glue to hold the skin layer together. So
and that just I know it comes off my fingers no problem. Not so much with my son. He's like that's like his mortal enemy right now, is super glue on the fingers. But does that how does that does it just flake off when it's healed, or type of thing, or?
Oh yeah, it comes off eventually.
There's no chance of infection.
Just don't stick your fingers together. Make sure it's not attached to the next finger because that can be a problem to get it off your other fingers. But yeah.
Nail polish
Another-
remover will take care of that real quick.
Another good
Good.
thing is to
Okay,
grow
good.
your own things. Like
Yeah,
right here,
yeah,
I'm going to show you.
That's an old modeler's trick. Nail polish remover, even the cheap stuff from the dollar store, the blue and the purple stuff, it'll take super glue off. You may have to soak it for a while, but I take things, old miniatures from other people apart with it.
Oh, wow. And that does that too?
Yeah, I've
That's
taken
very good.
miniatures that were glued together 20 years ago, drop them in it, and after a while, it just turns the super glue into this like rubber, like almost like rubber cement, and you can pull it off and
How cool.
You can also, like I just showed you, you can grow things that can help you with different ailments. That's what
Absolutely.
I just had there was what was that, Ann? That
Aloe.
Aloe vera?
It's an aloe
yeah,
plant. Yeah.
aloe. Went right out of my brain. But aloe, that's fresh aloe. And if you wanted different herbs for things, you can go to around you. There's probably plant trader groups. Some of them are better than others, believe me. Some of them, but a lot of people know a little bit about plants and what they're used for, and they'll trade you certain plants for other plants. So you could they might have aloe vera, they might have things, and it's free, and it's a good way. You grow some plants, you take them, and we're talking, a good way to do it, just to get some free stuff, and you can grow them and make your own little indoor greenhouse for different medicines, things that will go for medicines. You can look at books, find out there's things growing in your yard. Of course, we've discussed that.
Right. I was just every once in a while I get that ad for the Old Ways book and some other things.
Yep,
showing I can see 3 different weeds in my backyard that have medicinal purposes. You got to do stuff with them sometimes, boil them and things like that to turn them into the things, but one of them is like a massively powerful painkiller, and it's right there in my backyard. And, I don't want to, go too much into that because I'm actually trying to find someone who's a hardcore expert on some of the things like that. And we can do a show together about all the different plants that are probably right outside your backyard, front yard, just waiting to be used, in an emergency.
Michelle,
that's a great idea because it's herbology is a great big field. There's lots of information, and identifying plants is critical, and how to use them and how not to use them is a big topic. So that would be great to have a talk about that. I would love to hear from somebody about that. But see, there's another thing that you have to prepare yourself for now. You can't say, oh, later when time comes, I know you can use mullein for lung issues, and just wait until things get bad.
Right.
You need to be aware of it. And,
picking it and storing it. Squirrel Hermit says, please look deeply into the use of trees for medicinal and such. You'd be greatly surprised. Yeah. I've got pine trees all around, and the inner white bark of pine trees is very edible and very sustaining. And had the Donner Party knew about that, we would have never talked. We would have never mentioned, even the American Indians that were with them and didn't even know that. And I'm like, really?
Wow.
You would think that they would have figured that out, but apparently they didn't know that you could just, take your axe to a pine tree and strip off the outer layer of bark, and then that white stuff, you could do all kinds of things with it, make all kinds of different foods, I should say. And it would have kept them,
alive.
What they had to do, or what some of them chose to do instead of, they could have just, pine tree right there. And I guarantee within the 25 houses surrounding me right now, none of them know that.
Right.
And in an emergency, what would they do? They chop the trees down and start using them as firewood, not knowing that if you strip off that, it's not a very thick layer of bark, but if you strip that off instead of throw it in the fire, you could then cook that inner layer of bark or fiber, cook that, eat that, and still burn the tree and not miss any amount of, heat and fire production, by just taking that one part out,
and keep your family alive.
As well as, using the sap. I'm sure the sap is edible, and the pine nuts are edible. And I had a squirrel up in one of my pine trees just yesterday, just macking away on something. I don't know what it was, but it was part of the pine tree. So, squirrel, what's up? Do you know what he was eating? Was it the pine cones?
Was it
Or
a
was it?
relative?
I doubt it. I mean,
In the
probably
spring, though, I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Because in the spring, the pine cones are all off the tree mostly.
And another.
Not on my
I-
tree. I've got
Are they still up there?
one tree in the backyard, and what it's doing, I saw it this morning. The wind came by, and this big yellow cloud was created from it hitting the pine cones and the
Yeah.
pollen or whatever. It was just like I've never seen that happen before. But it was just
How cool.
big yellow cloud. I'm like, I'm glad I was, upwind of that.
Mhm.
Who was it that just
Interesting.
mentioned the border czar who wasn't coming to the border? If you want to call him the czar, he, absolutely right. And another thing is, there are so many unvaccinated. I mean, certain vaccines are good, I think, but there's so many sick people coming up from who knows where and who knows what they have. And we're facing new problems because of our own government allowing our borders to be free and open to anybody. Enemies coming across the border, sleeper agents.
Yeah,
I've
I
never
don't even
seen
want to
anything
get
like
into
this,
that because all I think about are these devices that come in suitcases, and they could easily there could be 100 of them in our country already, and
there's a lot of the
all
Soviet
nothing.
100. Absolutely. Well, a lot of the Soviet 152 millimeter artillery rounds, which isn't that big, are missing. And they've been sold to
I was
terrorist
talking
groups.
about the ones that make mushroom clouds.
Oh, these are atomic artillery warheads, and they are big enough to easily transport. And our intelligence agencies don't know where they are. They try to find them. And we have other things have been stolen. MIRVs, multiple independently targeted reentry vehicles, have been sold to our enemies, to terrorist groups. I'm sorry, but the Russians didn't care, and they didn't. They've done a lot of things. Like, I'll tell you one thing real quick, just about health and fish. They have in the Baltic Sea, because I was in a radiological monitoring class in the military, and this was what I learned in the radiological monitoring class in the military. They have 17 nuclear submarines in the Baltic that they have done nothing with. Pure poison leaking out into the Atlantic Ocean, and it is frightening beyond anything you could. They dump cesium, plutonium, uranium that's used into the oceans, as do the Chinese. Nobody does anything about this. This is serious and scary. And the fish you're eating, you better be aware of what you're eating, because this is pure poisoning our oceans beyond any. 17 reactors in the water. Think of how big that that Japanese Fukushima that got hit. One nuclear power plant. One. This is 17 reactors. They're not as big, but 17 of them just freely leaking into the Baltic and leaking. That's why there's not hardly anything in the Baltic, and leaking into the Atlantic Ocean, and the Chinese dumping, going out to sea, and the Russians still dumping this stuff with no care for the world or anybody else. Living for today and dumping that filth into our oceans, into our oceanic plant life, into our oceanic creatures, whales, animals, and
Because that's how you get Godzilla. Dumping that stuff. Real quick, Arman says caution removing the bark from around a tree circumference, as it will girdle the trees, it will kill the tree, so don't overdo it. I was actually only referring to the trees that you're already going to chop down. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it until it gets pretty grim. Crafty Gamer says the pine tree sap was used in making weapons for the Native American tribes. And a couple others here I want to get to. Arman lived in Georgia and had to hose a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch of pine pollen on the tree to go to work. Ow. And game related, because we really kind of missed that today. Hey, I'm really stoked for the Hornmaster game. It will be playing online if you want to watch. Who's running it? Because I may pop in to watch it. I've never played any Horn. but and what was this one? My guy will lead the mule and do the dishes. I'm really wimpy. Okay. And I pray for the age of Godzilla. Um, are you going to be the Ultraman and get all giant size so you won't have to worry about it, while us puny little mortals will be getting stomped like ants? I'm not looking forward to that, man. I mean, it looks cool on TV, and I played a bunch of Godzilla and other giant monster rampage kind of games, but you know, every once in a while I do worry about the little guys. That does not sound like fun. And if my house got squished, I'm coming. I'm going to blame you, man.
Well,
So
that stuff in your seafood isn't fun either. It's a
I
serious
only eat. I really don't eat a lot of
situation.
seafood, but I know a lot of people do, and I'm glad they do because they make it so that there's more hamburger and chicken for guys like me who don't eat the seafood. I'm not a fan of bugs. I don't care if you call it a lobster; it's still a bug. But I do eat tuna and I do eat cod from. Well, it's been like 10 years since I've had fish and chips, but I guess I better grab some while it's still not glowing in the dark. So, Michelle, did we hit all four of your levels there?
I think so.
Okay,
Yeah.
because we're hitting a little past the hour mark. I'm sorry, Bo couldn't make it, but maybe we'll have him on for another topic. He's written so much about this topic, and I really wanted to have him on. But you know what? If he's sleeping after a long shift at the hospital, that's better because then he'll be able to go back to work the next day and not be all groggy and stuff like me, and potentially make a mistake, which I wouldn't want to be responsible for. Are there any last thoughts on this topic before we put it to bed and come back next week with another topic?
But I think everybody out there who's watching this, figure out where you're weak, figure out the points you need help on, and if you really are serious about doing it, you should do it. And if you're not serious about it, you should think of why, because you should be. If you have loved ones, like I say, you can't count on our government to protect you. A lot of people believe that, and you just can't. And they're not going to do it, and don't think that they will. And that's something it's on you, and it's on your potentially your local fire departments, rescue squads, hospitals, and of course your police department. Hopefully they're good, and that's always a great thing to have. But don't, maybe state levels depending on where you are, but don't count on the federal government to do much, as we saw in that train accident. Which who was it that was it was Squirrel, right? Who was in in Ohio with the trains?
Yes.
Squirrel knows that. He said their response level. What was it before we go, Squirrel? What was that response level on a 1 to 10 of the federal government? He said it was really low. Hopefully he'll type that out.
Oh, and real quick, Squirrel, can you see that? Can you see that? You know what that is?
It's an Egyptian symbol. It's a
no, it's the symbol for the greatest rock and roll band of all time. He says zero. Cult? Blue Oyster Cult. Yeah, the authors of that song Godzilla, that I could actually, if I never hear it again, I'll be just fine. Squirrel says a couple of things. He says community authentic will survive the longest, and that's actually our topic for next week. Is you building a strong community of like-minded individuals. Large government is a historic anomaly, and I guess the response level was zero. Squirrel, believe it or not, there's a YouTuber out there. Her name is her channel is called Squirrel Tribe, and she's been talking a lot about what's been going on in your area, as in what might have really been going on in your area. If you want to give her a chance, get back to me and let me know what you think of her. She's a fine young lady who does some serious investigating on a bunch of things, like what happened to you. Oh, you're
God bless her.
already a subscriber to the Squirrel Tribe. Yeah, she's awesome.
Squirrel should be on your show. He was recently in something. He'd be great to just hear what he has to say about.
Well, that's actually what I was talking about earlier. I've invited Squirrel Hermit to be my guest on One this Friday at about 1 o'clock my time. If he's up for it, then we will do a one so you guys can all get to know him. Because Squirrel is one of those guys that if you haven't met, you really should go over there and subscribe to his channel. He doesn't put out videos as often as I do, but every one of them is gold and magic. And the attack kittens that he is cohabitating with are the best. And I look forward to every one of his videos. He's one of the few people that if he puts out a video, I do not hesitate. A lot of people, I'll be like, I'll watch it later. I'm in the middle of something. But if Squirrel puts out a video, he'll tell you I'm one of the very first people to watch his videos. How's it going, Travis? I hope you've been here for a while, but if you just got here, we're about to end the show, Travis, and you can rewind it. I did finally find your emails, and I think I responded to one of them. Hope you're doing well and doing the things. And I hope you enjoyed those books because they're pretty awesome. Just put it there. So, Michelle, before we go, what?
Sorry, what was Squirrel's channel name again? I didn't catch it.
It's Squirrel Hermit. Squirrel Hermit.
Squirrel Hermit. Okay.
Yes, he's a great guy. Great gamer. Old school as you and I. And anytime, Squirrel. With my previous career of doing the PI thing, and some other stuff, I had to be able to size up a person, within 30 seconds or less. And you're one of those guys. So I'm looking forward to, hanging out with you for more than just an hour on the one-on-one, but let's get that started. And if you can't do it this week, maybe next week. And I'm glad you've been enjoying those books. And those books, for those of you who don't know out in the audience, are the Arduin books, the Arduin trilogy, and all the other Arduin books are available from Emperor's Choice if you're interested in getting some of that old school goodness from the oldest of old.
Been looking at mine.
There's only a few things that came out for Dungeons and Dragons, and that being the original. Arduin is not the original, but it's the original supplement to D&D, and then eventually its own thing. Awesome, Squirrel. I can't wait to get to hang out with you. And you got a couple of subs from the show, Squirrel. Mobius just subbed to you, and I know Grim and his wife will sub to you, if only for the cat videos, right, Michelle?
Of course.
Well, the Chihuahuas,
Yeah.
The Chihuahuas were wondering about these cat videos. They are at war with cats. So
good luck with that. These kittens are pretty tough little monsters. They can take down a giant king of the squirrels with just a purr. Oh my God! Look
Doesn't
at that
he
face.
look tough? He's not really tough.
Adorable. So, Michelle, you want to take us out of here with some final words for the show?
Final words would be: start slow, start small. Just buy something small, put it back, and kind of start small, and just do something. Don't do nothing. And thank you so much for touching on this topic. It's really important.
Thank you for showing up, both of you two. We will be eternally grateful. And years from now, when we're all long gone, people will be looking for advice, and hopefully they'll come here and get to see you guys' smiling faces and take it to heart, because I've been doing this stuff for a long time, and every day I'm grateful that I don't have to use it, but like the fire extinguisher, I'd rather have it, not need it, than need it, not have it. As simple as that.
Absolutely.
So, folks, have a wonderful day, a wonderful week. Spring is in the air. We love you guys. Thank you for showing up. Grim and Michelle, if you want to stay, hang out, for a few minutes after I end the show. We can hang out in the green room and have the after party. Everybody else, take care and God bless.
Bye.
Bye bye. God bless.